Wes Streeting, the Archbishop of Canterbury, has called on all parties to drop the two-child limit on tax credits. I don't want to ask you about the policy, but speaking as a practising Anglican, is this really his business? Shouldn't he be focusing on getting people into church this morning rather than writing welfare policy?
No, I actually really welcome the Archbishop of Canterbury's intervention. You're never going to find, if there's a Labour government, politicians being sent out to attack the Archbishop of Canterbury for virtue signalling, as Conservative MPs have done. It's literally his job. He's the one person in the country whose job it is to signal virtue. And if the mission of the Church is not to alleviate poverty and suffering, then I don't know what is. If you read the Bible, if you believe in the Bible, that central driving mission of Christianity, I think, is a rage against injustice, and that's what the Archbishop of Canterbury is doing. I take him really seriously, and if we are fortunate enough to be in government after the next general election, we will have a serious cross-government strategy for not just reducing child poverty, but ending child poverty, because that's the driving mission of Labour too. So
he's going to get a yes back from you. The cap has gone now, if Labour is in government.
Well, look, one of the consequences of the Conservatives' disastrous handling of the economy is the public finances are in the mess and there are harder choices to make. So unless and until I can sit on your programme and say we will do X by funding it through Y, that's not a commitment I'm able to make today. And all I'd say is, on this issue, because I think social security is part of alleviating poverty, and I know that the benefit system put food in the fridge and money in the electric meter when I was growing up. But if you're serious about ending child poverty, you need a strategy that attacks the causes. So, for example, building 1.5 million new homes would make a real difference to reducing housing costs and providing security.
I want to come to wider issues, but just on this particular one, you're sounding like somebody who actually agrees with the Archbishop, and if you can do it, you would like to get rid of this limit.
Well, I voted against the two-child limit, so by definition, I wish it wasn't there. But as we've seen across the board, it's a lot easier to get rid of stuff than it is to put stuff back, and that's the frustrating thing about the vandalism we've seen through 14 years of Conservative government.
All right. Let's talk about something which has spanned many administrations of both colours, all three colours, in fact, and that is the infected blood scandal. If the government agrees to a compensation scheme as set out by Sir Brian Langstaff, will Labour fall in behind that?
Absolutely. We've been calling on the government to act. The Labour Party has. We've got brilliant campaigners like Diana Johnson, who has really fought for these families. And I haven't seen the report yet, but I would anticipate that Sir Brian Langstaff's going to criticise, as you said, successive governments. Everyone has got their responsibility to bear in this appalling scandal, and we've got a shared responsibility to put it right. And I was really pleased to see the front page of the Sunday Times today, who've been, you know, Caroline Wheeler and others also campaigning brilliantly on this, because every 4 days, one of the victims dies without justice. So the moment to act can't come soon enough.
So the answer here is whatever it takes, you will pay?
Well, we'll back the Chancellor. I'm sure he's going to make the right decision this week, and he'll have our support in doing it. And if that's the only thing he does between now and the election, that's the right thing to do, the right priority, and we'll have rare cross-party consensus in a general election year.
All right, let's see if we can upset the consensus a little bit. Sir Jim Ratcliffe says he expects Labour to win an election, criticised the government's 75% tax on oil and gas. Now, he's been talking to Rob Harris, my colleague here. He met Keir Starmer last Sunday at Old Trafford. Is Labour going to change its line on the windfall tax on big energy?
No, it's an important part of capitalising GB Energy, which is going to be our publicly owned energy company, which is going to work with the private sector to unlock private sector investment in the renewable energy that our country needs, but also ensure that as the taxpayers investing with the private sector, we get a return on that investment. We're putting a stake in and we will get a return. So it means alongside lower bills, more jobs, giving Britain its energy security back, we will also see a taxpayer return on the investment, which is the right way to do government.
Ratcliffe is one of Britain's biggest, wealthiest and most influential business people. And it's been reported that quite a lot of people are coming across from that community to Labour, and you're very pleased about all of that. Now, in this interview, he also expresses some forthright views on immigration, pointing out that he supported Brexit because, as he put it, we cannot cope with the vast numbers of people coming into the United Kingdom who overburden the NHS. Are you sure that's the message that you want projected?
Well, I think we do need to reduce net migration, as well as deal with some of the challenges we've got in relation to challenges like small boats.
But he's saying migration is overwhelming the... overburdening, I beg your pardon, the NHS. That's your...
Well, look, I think you have to look at this in the round as well, because, you know, I'm conscious of the fact that we are actually over-reliant on migration to staff the NHS at the moment. So we are taking people from red list countries, countries that by definition have a severe shortage of their own healthcare workers. And the reason we've been recruiting so many people from overseas to work in the NHS is because we haven't been investing in our own homegrown talent. We've actually been turning away thousands of straight-A students from studying medicine at university because of the cap on places. And actually, I think not only is that immoral as far as recruitment from red list countries goes, I think it's unfair to UK students who've been turned away, and I think it's a long-term strategic risk to the NHS because there's a global shortage of healthcare workers now. So we have to be self-sufficient in terms of building, training, drawing on our own homegrown talent. But look, you know, Trevor, the last 75 years, the story of the NHS has run alongside the story of Empire Windrush. Yeah, but and migration's built the NHS as well as...
Before we go into history, what Ratcliffe is basically saying is that there's too much pressure, there's too much demand on the NHS, and one way of reducing that demand is by reducing immigration.
Well, no, I think that there are a whole range of reasons why the NHS is under enormous pressure, not least the catastrophic decisions we've seen throughout the last 14 years of Conservative government.
All right.
But this is why I think the picture's a bit more complicated than Sir Jim set out, because, you know, migration has also been a huge part of staffing the NHS. And similarly, I see the government is now waging war on international students. Well, what a way to shoot yourself in the foot when it comes to the future of the economy.
Forgive me for interrupting you. Our time is limited, and every time we get back into how awful the government is in its 14 years, I want to start talking about what Labour wants to do. And actually, your leader has spelt out some of that. And, you know, you and I have had this conversation before, and you always say, why are you complaining that we don't have policy? Now you've got policy. He spelt out these 6, let's call them baby steps.
First steps.
Now, viewers can see them, what they are. The first thing that is, I think, most striking about this is that there are no actual numbers. Or, well, there's one actual number here, 6,500 teachers. And that doesn't even have sell-by date. Is this really accountability? Because you could be sitting here in 5 years' time, and I'll say to you, none of this has been done, and you'll say to me, well, we didn't put a date on it, did we?
Well, what you can cut NHS waiting times is by delivering 40,000 more appointments every week at extra evening and weekend clinics. The crackdown on antisocial... Well, I think we can get those appointments up and running within the first year of a Labour government, by the way. So that we can get on with that quite quickly. Cracking down on antisocial behaviour, that's by training 13,000 new police officers. The Border Security Command, Great British Energy, these are specific outputs. And look, I take the point on economic stability that people might say, but stability, well, unfortunately, stability is change compared to where we are with this government.
This is interesting. Can you get this done can you get all of this done within the first year?
I certainly think, you know, working through economic stability, yes, we're going to respect institutions, have a serious industrial strategy and plan for growth. 40,000 more appointments in the first year, certainly. Border Security Command should be able to get up and running very quickly. Great British Energy will take some time to deliver, but I think we can do that fairly quickly as well.
I thought it was very interesting, because actually... I'm criticising them for being vague. You're being really rather specific here, because I want to compare this to the, if you like, the precursor, the 1997 pledge card. If you look at this, what's interesting about this is this one's got numbers all the way through it. It's very specific about what they're going to deliver and by when. The issue that I'm really asking here is, the way you've put this out gives you a lot of wriggle room, doesn't it?
No, I don't think... If you actually look at...
And you're going to be turning up here in this studio saying, oh, no, I didn't promise you by then.
No, if you look at the card that was published this week, Those numbers are on the back there. You've taken the headlines. But one of the great things I love about looking back at the 97 pledges, we said we would cut NHS waiting lists by 100,000 by sacking some NHS managers. Now, what we've got now is more ambitious than that, but also, look back at 97, we delivered the shortest waiting times and the highest patient satisfaction in history. It may not have been on the pledge card in 97 because we were doing the same thing then that we're doing now, which is setting out first steps, giving a cynical public some specific things they can judge us on. We're going to under-promise and over-deliver. That's what we did in 1997. That's what we'll do in 2024. What a contrast to 14 years of over-promising and under-delivering.
Let me just ask you something about the... let's just talk about the politics at the moment. I know you aren't complacent about the 20% polling lead. You've said that to me several times. But let me show you something that might give some of your more bullish colleagues pause for thought. I'm going to read this. It says, a quote from a leading politician, "I was probably 20 points ahead in most of the election campaign for 2017. And look what happened to that. Against a background of the economy improving, I think it's not a foregone conclusion." This is Theresa May, who does know what she's talking about when it comes to losing big leads. Does this make you feel a bit queasy about that 20-point lead?
She's absolutely right. And if people want change, they have to vote for it. Not a single vote has been cast in this general election. There is everything still for us to work for. We don't take people for granted. We will never take people for granted. We're working hard for every single vote. And the fact the Prime Minister was talking about hung Parliament tells you that he is determined to cling on by his fingernails. So if people want to turn the page on this absolute clown show of a government, the way to do that is to vote Labour at the general election, and that general election can't come soon enough.
Wes Streeting, thank you very much for your time this morning.